Drug maker Moderna raising a few eyebrows again today. Sad news reporting company executives sold $89 million worth of shares since the start of the year. The sales were pre-planned, so legal. But they come as the company looks to raise more than $1 billion through a secondary stock offering. Moderna shares are now down 35% since last Monday's closing price when the company announced positive phase 1 clinical trials of a potential coronavirus vaccine. Our next guest reiterated an overweight rating on the stock with a $100 price target. Let's bring in Piper Sandler senior biotech analyst Ted Tenthoff. Ted, great to have you with us.
Thanks, Melissa.
Would you concede that there's an optics problem at Moderna in terms of the preliminary phase 1 data being released, the company's then rushing to sell a secondary, and then now this news about all these pre-planned sales?
Well, actually, in the biotech space, companies often raise money on the heels of positive data. And if you think about it, this is money that's being raised to be able to manufacture upwards of 1 billion SARS-CoV-2 vaccines. So the company certainly needs the money. The timing of the insider sales is not optimal. But as you mentioned in the opening comments, these are very strictly controlled for C-level executives. So I think it's an optics issue, but not more than that.
Is there any concern in your mind that the SEC could have grounds to investigate? Because even though, as we understand, in speaking to Jacob Frankel, a former SEC attorney, even though these sales were pre-planned and legal, the SEC could still have grounds to investigate.
Yeah, so I don't have a comment on what the SEC is going to do. They obviously do a great job monitoring all different kinds of trades that occur. So, it's going to be up to them if they decide to look into these insider stock sales.
Okay, let's talk about the stock itself and your overweight rating on it. You see the stock virtually doubling over the next 12 months, according to your call here. So in terms of the $10 billion in revenue, 1 billion doses a year. So that's $10 a dose. I'm wondering who pays for this, Ted? I mean, we're trying to understand for vaccines like this, when there's such pressure on the part of governments to say this is a humanitarian cause at this point, give us the vaccines. Who will pay for that?
Yeah, so, clearly government will pay for this. Also, I believe insurers will pay for this. If you think about the cost of a single vaccine versus what it costs for a patient to go into the hospital with severe respiratory distress and go on a ventilator for months, vaccination's one of the most cost beneficial areas of investment. And actually, when you think about $10 a vaccine, that's about the price of a flu vaccine every year. So tell me, Melissa, wouldn't you pay $10 for a SARS-CoV-2 vaccine at this point for the ability to go back to life? And one investor really put it to me this way. He said, yes, how much has SARS-CoV-2, how much has the COVID pandemic cost the U.S. economy? I mean, $5 trillion at least in stimulus. I have to imagine it's at least double that. So even if it was $100 billion, that's a drop in the bucket in terms of what this protective vaccine, this protective product could do in terms of actually revitalizing and protecting the American economy and the American people.
How much is a COVID vaccine? How much of that is in your model in terms of what it's worth to the stock? I mean, as I understand it, Moderna has never brought a product across the finish line, and it has 6 platforms that have either failed or have been dropped.
Well, I think that might not be a fair characterization.
Okay.
We believe that messenger RNA, which is the technology behind this, is ideally suited for vaccines. And again, keep in mind, nobody's really named a price yet for this vaccine. We're just assuming, let's say it's $10 a share. They entered into a contract with Lonza to be able to produce 1 billion a year. I'm just trying to show what the potential could be. It may actually end up costing more than that. And again, I think the value that a product like that would bring. And this is really, we put a 1.5 times multiple on those revenues, and that's about 15 billion or a little less than half of the total value of our $36+ billion enterprise value for our $100 price target. Moderna is working on other vaccines, including for very serious diseases like cytomegalovirus, RSV, Zika, other diseases as well. And this technology could be ideally suited for orphan diseases where the RNA can actually be used to produce the missing protein or enzyme we think that's a really exciting opportunity for this company a little bit beyond COVID-19. Right.
Karen's got a question for you, Ted.
Hi, Karen.
Yeah, thanks for being on, Ted. When you think about the revenue for the vaccine, how do you think about the competition, right? You've got some of the very deepest pockets in the world trying to get to the same place.
Yeah, great question. And, for starters, keep in mind, first really does matter here, because if you think about it, all of us who have not been exposed to SARS-CoV-2 have zero antibodies. That's why this disease has been so disruptive and so deadly, frankly. So really just inching up the immunity to any level provides protection. And what the company reported in the NIH reported really from their study that the lowest doses of this vaccine, 25 micrograms, gets to sera levels that are that of a patient recovering from COVID-19, and 100 micrograms gets even higher. So, there's a lot of competition out there. Frankly, 1 billion doses when you have to get 2 vaccinations each, that's 500 million vaccines. We're going to need everybody to produce as much vaccine as possible to really not just protect the United States, but protect our European allies and the rest of the world. So, personally, I think we should be cheering for all of these companies to succeed.
Ted, great to speak with you. Thanks so much for your time.
Have a great day.
Ted Tenthoff of Piper Sandler. We've been collectively skeptical of this stock for mainly the optics reasons, but also because the data is preliminary at this point. Guy, have you changed your mind?
Well, now it's at a point where it becomes a little bit of a lottery ticket. So have I changed my mind only in so much as the stock has gone lower? One thing I want to say quickly, listen, companies can do what they want. If they think it's the right time to price a secondary, who am I to argue? My point wasn't so much the secondary, it's their excuse as to why they did it. They said they were doing that secondary to raise $1.25 billion for manufacturing and distribution of the vaccine. You only do that if the vaccine was successful, and if the vaccine was successful, the stock would be trading $100, which is a much better level to do a secondary. So to me, it's not so much the secondary, it's the somewhat nebulous reason as to they gave why they did it.